It's time to wake up, everybody. No, I really mean it. Just have a look at these scenes. This is happening today in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. Yep, it is Spanish territory. Tens of thousands, maybe more, breaking in to that little part of Spain. The authorities seemingly powerless to act, and yes, of course, they've declared a state of emergency. Bear this in mind. Earlier this year, Spain gave an amnesty to 500,000 people who'd illegally got into the country. The messages from Spain are clear. You know, come in.
Originals, I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
And you'll be allowed to stay. Some of you might remember a poster I put out 10 years ago called Breaking Point, where I showed vast numbers illegally breaking into the European Union. I made the point that if we vote for Brexit, we'll have the power to stop those people coming here. Sadly, the Tories failed us, Labour have failed us. Believe me, unless we get a reform government, those scenes you're seeing in Spain today, many of those young men, lots of them dangerous, will be heading towards Calais and coming to our country too. It is time to wake up. This is a battle for the future of our civilization. I can't put it any more plainly than that.
Now, Spain is being invaded by Morocco, and they're doing pretty much nothing about it. 60,000 illegal immigrants, almost entirely fighting-age young men, have stormed into Spain in the last 24 hours. Yes, well, for context, this is actually where they are invading. So it's the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. The actual number of residents there is apparently 84,000. So when you think that 60,000 lads came in the last 24 hours, there's almost double the population, haven't they? And what have these peace-loving, gentle, vulnerable North African men decided to do there? Well, just a little bit of looting and criminal damage. And then they decided to do a bit more. Yes, that was them just entering people's homes and asking if they could sleep there for the night, and I imagine that was a hard no. But anyway, and just, of course, the traditional, kind, vibrant, diverse way of saying hello to the local police by throwing rocks at them and attacking them. And I can tell you that apparently it's now not just Ceuta, because Spain has another small enclave in Morocco called Melilla. You have to excuse my pronunciation there. And they've started invading that as well, apparently. Nice. Well, in case you're wondering how exactly 60,000 Moroccans could just suddenly appear at the Spanish border, seemingly out of nowhere, take a look at this. Yes, that was the Moroccan police force there, giving them essentially a guided tour all the way through to that border, not doing anything to stop them. Now, there have been reports of some Moroccan forces beating crowds back now, but that took them a very long time, didn't it? And if this is state-sponsored, which it looks like, and I should just say as well that in the last hour or so there are reports emerging online from described as Western intelligence services to say that they have the intelligence, they claim, that actually this was a deliberate thing by the Moroccan government. So if that's true, at what point is this a state-sponsored invasion of another country? European leaders have called for Spain's temporary suspension from the bloc's Schengen-free travel zone because these, for some reason, other countries just don't want these sweet, polite young North Africans in their communities, and I can't think why. But here is the ridiculousness of the European Union exposed, OK? Apparently, the European Union, this was released earlier, could have taken up to 28 days to formally respond to Spain's appeal for help 28 days to respond to the invasion of a member state. I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's absolutely pathetic, but not quite as pathetic as this. Just look at this footage again.
The Ceuta spark. How Spain's border collapse prepares the ground for Britain's next immigration crisis. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the home for sharp analysis, unvarnished truths, and the political realities that the mainstream establishment would rather sweep under the Persian rug. If you are new around here, hit that subscribe button right now, because your support genuinely helps this channel cut through the noise, stay independent, and deliver the unfiltered stories that shape our nation. Take a deep breath, sit back, and stay informed, because today we are untangling a story that begins on the rocky shores of North Africa and leads directly to the doorstep of Westminster. Let us jump right into it. The global geopolitical landscape rarely operates in isolation, and what transpired in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta over the past 48 hours is precise proof of that rule. Tens of thousands of migrants breached a European frontier in a matter of hours, taking advantage of local geography, maritime loopholes, and a legal apparatus that appeared entirely unequipped to manage the sheer velocity of the surge. For Spain, it was an immediate crisis of national sovereignty that forced Madrid to deploy armoured military units and coordinate massive, swift returns. For Italy, it was a trigger to suspend border-free transit arrangements under the Schengen framework, shutting down seamless travel routes to isolate the shockwaves. But for those watching from across the English Channel, the implications are vastly more direct, personal, and urgent than the political class in London is willing to publicly concede.
There we go, so that's the lads, isn't it? They're coming across, bit of an invasion, you might say. And now listen to convicted fraudster Louise Haigh, who's Andy Burnham's right-hand woman in Cabinet, refusing to call illegal immigration like this an invasion.
No, I wouldn't use language like that. It's obviously extremely concerning, and I understand your viewers' understandable anxieties about people crossing into this country illegally.
I wouldn't call things an invasion. You know, we can't use language like that as they storm into a variety of different countries and, of course, across the English Channel. But look, in my view, every single one of those lads that we saw on those videos there has to go back to Morocco ASAP.
When a sovereign border falls so dramatically in southern Europe, the ripples do not stop at the Pyrenees. They travel north. Nigel Farage was among the first prominent political figures in Britain to point out the obvious vulnerability staring the country in the face. In his typical punchy, direct fashion, Farage highlighted that when European border mechanisms collapse under pressure, the unintended destination for a substantial percentage of those moving through the continent remains the United Kingdom. His commentary was not merely opportunistic commentary. It was a sobering calculation based on historical precedent and the structural reality of Britain's current policy framework. Consider the dynamic at play. When European member states react to mass arrivals by tightening their own internal checkpoints, suspending bilateral agreements, and hardening physical barriers, they effectively create a pressure cooker within continental Europe. Those who have reached the mainland find their mobility restricted within the Schengen zone. Naturally, the path of least resistance shifts towards routes that bypass continental controls entirely. Britain, with its distinct legal ecosystem, sprawling coastlines, and deeply strained processing system, becomes the ultimate point of convergence. The logic is simple, even if the fallout is complex. If Spain cannot secure a land enclave backed by military force, and if Italy feels compelled to wall off its legal entry points from fellow European allies, the assertion that the English Channel is somehow immune to similar pressures falls completely flat.
But we'll get the views of our panel on this. So, look, the latest line on this is that Western intelligence now believes that this was deliberately done by the Moroccan government and the Moroccan leadership. Adam, this is...
For me, that's an act of war. if another country did that to us, I'd expect us to fire rockets and fire gunfire at them. That's what I would do if I was Prime Minister. That's because I want to keep my people safe. I want to keep our women and our girls away from these culturally far different people that have terrible attitudes towards women, disproportionately attack women sexually. We've seen it in this country. And only in the last 2 days, we've seen 3 women die on dinghies crossing the channel. Now, women make up between 5 and 10% of crossings. Some months it's like 2 or 3%. Yet it's always women that die on the crossings. And you know why? Because these savages throw them overboard, or they trample them, or they attack them. And that is the sort of people that are now in hotels, barracks and HMOs near your family. So yes, I will not mince my words. It is an invasion. We have had enough as a country. If you speak to people in high streets, pubs or whatever, they're scared. I am petrified of a father of 2 daughters because they are allowing these monsters into our country, and they're not listening. And they'd rather demonise us as far right than deal with the problem.
OK, all right. Just on that, it is worth noting, because some people watching or listening to this now might go, well, gosh, you know, where's the evidence that they do tend to throw women overboard and get them out? We actually had that on camera earlier this week. We actually showed you that on this show earlier this week of people. There was a boat full of blokes, and then in the end there was 3 women or so who ended up in the water. So, you know, it does happen, and they were slapped there by the blokes that were on the boat.
And the odds of 3 women to have heart attacks in the same boat is something like 300 million to 1. We're being lied to by our authorities and our media.
I hope the 3 charity worker women waving off one of those boats are pleased when they see women dying in the crossing.
We've probably slept with some of them. We've got a massive problem with that. A lot of the charity workers, the Liberal women, sleep with the migrants. That's a fact too.
There was a story about that a little while ago, to be fair. There was, but I imagine that they've probably brought rules in place now where that kind of stuff is frowned upon. Anyway, so yes, look, Christo, this idea now that there is Western intelligence that Morocco was behind.
It is worth pausing to reflect on how rapidly these situations escalate when legal loopholes are exploited. In Ceuta, individuals realised that swimming around a harbour barrier granted them immediate access to territorial waters where legal precedent hindered immediate pushbacks. The maritime route became a golden ticket, rendering land fortifications practically redundant until emergency measures were enacted. If that scenario sounds familiar, it is because Britain has been dealing with its own version of maritime exploitation for years. The small boats crossing the Dover Strait rely on the exact same premise. Once you touch the water within a jurisdiction that prioritizes complex procedural processing over immediate deterrence, the system tilts heavily in favor of the entrant. This is precisely why Farage's warning carries weight across the political spectrum, regardless of whether one agrees with his broader platform. The UK border apparatus is currently stretched to its absolute limit. Administrative backlogs are measured in years, hotel accommodation costs run into billions of pounds, and public patience has worn razor thin. A fresh wave of mobility generated by destabilization in the Mediterranean does not stay in the Mediterranean. It moves along established network corridors, organized by criminal cartels that monitor European policy shifts with predatory precision. The moment human traffickers perceive a bottleneck in Central Europe, they redirect their logistics toward northern transit hubs like Calais and Dunkirk. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the underlying mechanics of international politics, please take a quick moment to subscribe to Britain Underneath. Hitting that button takes less than a second, but it empowers us to keep bringing you these detailed breakdowns week after week. Your encouragement and support are what keep this channel growing, so do not forget to join our community today. Now look at the response from the British political establishment. The official posture remains one of cautious observation, characterised by diplomatic statements expressing concern for European partners while assuring the public that domestic measures are robust. Yet anyone examining the numbers knows that assurance is largely performative. The United Kingdom does not possess a magically impervious barrier along its maritime perimeter. The reality is that our enforcement capability is bound by legal entanglements, operational limitations, and a chronic lack of political willpower to implement decisive deterrence. When Farage suggests that Britain is the likely next target for these secondary movements, he is highlighting a structural flaw in the national strategy. As mainland Europe grows increasingly defensive, implementing hard checks and military roundups, as seen in Ceuta, Britain risks becoming the default destination of choice simply by failing to match that level of resolve. Criminal networks thrive on policy asymmetry. If country A deploys military force and rapid return protocols, while country B offers lengthy appeals, housing support, and judicial delays, the logistical flow will naturally tilt toward country B every single time. This imbalance puts immense pressure on local communities, national infrastructure, and public resources that are already teetering on the edge. Public services across the country are facing unprecedented strain, from housing shortages to healthcare access. Introducing another unmanaged wave of arrivals into this delicate ecosystem is not just a policy challenge, it is a recipe for severe social tension. The public understands this intuitively, even if the policy architects in Westminster prefer to speak in abstract legal terminology. What happened in Ceuta was a dress rehearsal for the kind of mass pressure that modern Western nations will face continuously over the coming decade. It exposed how quickly international agreements crumble under real-world strain. Italy did not hesitate to pause border-free travel with Spain the moment its national interests were threatened. Madrid did not hesitate to send heavy vehicles into the streets to clear public spaces and restore order. These nations acted out of sheer self-preservation. Meanwhile, the conversation in London often feels hopelessly detached from the urgency of the moment, bogged down in endless parliamentary debates, while the external environment grows more volatile by the day. We must ask ourselves a direct question. Is the United Kingdom genuinely prepared for what happens when continental Europe hardens its borders to a point where northern transit becomes the only remaining outlet? The current framework suggests we are not. Relying on diplomatic goodwill and piecemeal enforcement, while fundamental legal loopholes remain open, is a strategy built on hope rather than realism. Farage's critique cuts to the heart of the matter because it demands that leaders confront the world as it is, not as they wish it to be in policy handbooks. We must ask ourselves a direct question. Is the United Kingdom genuinely prepared for what happens when continental Europe hardens its borders to a point where northern transit becomes the only remaining outlet? The current framework suggests we are not. Relying on diplomatic goodwill and piecemeal enforcement, while fundamental legal loopholes remain open, is a strategy built on hope rather than realism. Farage's critique cuts to the heart of the matter because it demands that leaders confront the world as it is, not as they wish it to be in policy handbooks. The events in North Africa were not an isolated incident, but a clear signal of things to come. The pressure on European frontiers will continue to build, driven by economic disparities, geopolitical instability, and highly sophisticated trafficking networks. As Europe reacts by closing its doors and suspending its own rules, the fallout will inevitably drift toward our shores. Britain stands at a critical crossroads, where passive observation is no longer a viable policy option.